Welcome to the Pan Am Podcast, brought to you by the Pan Am Museum in Garden City, New York. This podcast and our museum are dedicated to celebrating the legacy of the world's most iconic airline, Pan American World Airways. My name is Tom Betty, and I'm the host of this program. Thank you for joining us. The Pan Am Museum Foundation is a non-profit organization. Please visit our website for more information at thepanammuseum.org. Again, our website is thepanammuseum.org. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If you are using Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a review. It will help others discover this program. This podcast is sponsored by the generous personal support of Mr. Adam Aaron, the CEO and chairman of AMC Theaters. He is also president of our sister organization, the Pan Am Historical Foundation. If you're not familiar with Pan Am, welcome. We are honored to have you here and for you to learn about what we're all about. If you already know of Pan Am, worked for or flown on the airline, or just love our history, it's good to be with you again. So with that, let's get this episode in the air, so to speak. Welcome aboard your Pan American Jet Clipper. In this episode, we explore the life of legendary Hollywood costume designer Edith Head, who designed uniforms for Pan American World Airways, introduced in 1975 and used until the early 1980s. Then we will be joined by actor Susan Clausen, who plays the Hollywood legend in her one-woman production called A Conversation with Edith Head. Edith Claire Posner was born October 28, 1897, in San Bernardino, California. In 1919, Edith received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Letters and Sciences with honors in French from the University of California, Berkeley, and in 1920 earned a Master's of Arts degree in Romance Languages from Stanford University. She became a language teacher with her first position as a replacement at the Bishop's School in La Jolla teaching French. After 1 year, she took a position teaching Spanish at the Hollywood School for Girls. On July 25, 1923, she married Charles Head, the brother of one of her classmates. Although the marriage ended in divorce in 1938 after a number of years of separation, she continued to be known professionally as Edith Head until her death. In 1940, she married award-winning art director and interior designer Bill Innan, a marriage which lasted until his death in 1979. In her storied career in Hollywood, Edith Head won a record 8 Academy Awards for Best Costume Design between 1949 and 1973, making her the most awarded woman in the Academy's history. She is considered to be one of the greatest and most influential costume designers in film history. Let's listen to a report from ABC News on October 27, 1981, announcing the death of Edith Head, before our interview with actor Susan Clausen.
We had a theory that the clothes helped the woman get what she wanted.
As a debutante in A Place in the Sun, Elizabeth Taylor wanted to be noticed, and she was in this dress Edith Head designed for her. It got Edith Head something she wanted, an Academy Award. One of 8 Oscars she won in 50 years in Hollywood. A former school teacher with a master's degree in language, but an eye for design. An eye that succeeded on her first big job.
The film was called She Done Him Wrong, and it's the first picture on which I ever got credit. It's the dress in which she looks over her shoulder and says, "Why don't you come up and see me sometime?"
She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, but she became a giant in an industry that was sweeping the world with its costumes and its fantasy. She always dressed in a beige suit and glasses, conservatively, she said, not to clash with the stars. Edith Head always insisted that the clothes had to suit the story. In The Sting, she proved she could tell the story with men's clothes, too. That won her the Oscar for the last time. She won others for Audrey Hepburn's costumes in Sabrina, for Samson and Delilah, for All About Eve. She worked almost until the end, and she talked just 7 months ago about what she did best.
I have to translate the character, male or female, children, anything, through the meaning of what they wear. I am not a designer. I am a magician.
John Martin, ABC News, New York.
Now on to our interview. Susan Clausen is celebrating her 49th anniversary with Tucson's Invisible Theater in Arizona. As managing artistic director, now emeritus, she has produced and directed over 500 productions. Susan was nominated for the 2011 LA Stage Alliance Ovation Award and Broadway World LA Award as Best Actress for her portrayal of Edith Head in A Conversation with Edith Head, and most recently nominated for the San Francisco Bay Area Theater Critics Circle 43rd Annual Excellence in Theater Awards for Best Solo Production and Best Production. A Conversation with Edith Head premiered at the Invisible Theater in 2002 in Tucson, Arizona, and has played coast to coast with more than 700 performances. The production has toured internationally to the Republic of Georgia, a sold-out engagement at the 2007 Edinburgh Festival Fringe, Toronto, and an acclaimed 5-week run at the Leicester Square Theatre in London's West End. Susan has also been a clown in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade since 2001. She dedicates all of her performances to the vibrant memory of her beloved mother, Goldie. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Susan Clausen to the Pan Am podcast.
Well, thank you. It is a privilege to be with you and all our Pan Am friends.
It's very true. And you are definitely a staple in the Pan Am community. This interview, we're going to talk about a few things. Obviously, we're going to talk about Hollywood legend Edith Head and her connection to Pan American World Airways. But I also want to talk about you. You have been a professional actor for most of your adult life. And I want to start with you. So how did you get into acting? What inspired you? What are a couple of your favorite movies? Let's start at the beginning.
Well, at the beginning, I grew up in New Jersey, and it was very important in our family cultural offerings. I feel very fortunate that I was taken to Broadway, and I loved theater, and I was also really shy. But my best friend across the street was taking dramatic lessons. And of course, I wanted to because she was my best friend. And that was really the beginning. All through high school, went off to college at the University of Denver, far away from New Jersey. In the big gymnasium, it was, I told my parents I was going into speech therapy. And there was theater and there was speech therapy. And it was like, theater? My parents will never know. So I went to theater. And my parents really did not know. I never lied because I would never do that. But I pursued theater, and it was great. It was, in the late 60s, early 70s. It was an exciting time for theater. So my parents didn't know until I received the outstanding Junior in Theater Award, and my father and mother came out for it. And my father was so proud. I think he spent more taking out the whole cast on that. And that was really the beginning. And I actually went professional in Denver. It was before there's a resurgence of Denver is a major theater town now with the Denver Center. But at that time, it was all these small little theaters, and I got involved with that. And it was really, really exciting. And then I was only being cast as a cute little urchin, because I'm little, urchin-like, I guess. I wasn't even auditioning, and I knew I had more in me than that. And so when my ex-husband, Robert Clausen, thus the name, decided he wanted to go to school in anthropology, and University of Arizona was great, I was ready to move for a new start. And immediately I started working at what was the Lord Theatre, which is a League of Resident Theaters, professional theater. I was already Equity, our actors union. And that was the beginning. And then a friend of mine who I met at an audition at this Arizona, it was Civic Theater then, but it turned into now Arizona Theater Company. She said, a new theater is starting. Come on, let's go look. And she had a background in improv, and I had a background in improv. And we went to this new theater and walked up these steps. And in Tucson, it's very flat, so it's rare to walk up steps, but it felt the closest to a loft, like a loft in New York, and it was an exciting collective time. And that really was the beginning. And it was all new plays for the first 10 years. First year was artistically exciting, but it was economically devastating. And both Molly and I were married at the time, so we had other income. So interestingly, all the men left and left the women in charge. So it was sort of OJT. Fortunately, I had a mind. My father was a businessman. He wasn't a college-educated man, but he instilled in me, you don't spend what you don't have. And it has served very, very well. And I have a very logical mind. I never thought I could do math. I like geometry because it was pretty shapes and pictures, and I'm visual. But I evolved into a managerial role as well as an artistic role. And that really was the beginning of me being involved with Invisible Theater and in the Tucson community, and very active in the Jewish community here in town and education. I have projects which I develop for special needs called Project Pastime. So we do theater programs, which I've been doing for close to 40 years. So it's something that we have developed, that the arts are a great equalizer. It focuses on ability rather than dwelling on disability, which is certainly core value for me. So it's been such an interesting time of development over the last going on 50 years at the Invisible Theater.
That's great. Let's talk about your one-woman show, A Conversation with Edith Head, and how did that come about?
It's interesting. As an actor, I have performed one-woman shows: Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, Shirley Valentine, and I had written for others and directed others, but I had never written anything for myself. I'm watching Biography Channel, and I'm certainly of the age I knew who Edith Head was. I'm watching, and this is in 2001. And there's a biography on Edith Head. Now, no one ever said to me prior to this moment that I looked like Edith Head. They would say other people, but not Edith Head ever. I'm watching and I said, I look like her. And then as I watched, I realized there was so much to this story, well beyond fashion, well beyond glamour, well beyond Hollywood. She was an executive woman before there was such a thing. She was 1923, Tom. They had just recently got the vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's when she joined Paramount. And it was a boys' club, definitely. So I watched it. I went, oh my God. So I quickly checked to see if there had been a theatrical piece. No. I quickly checked to, did she have any living relatives? No, she had left her estate to the Motion Picture and Television Fund, which is the organization for anyone who works in the film business. And Edith was active in that, and you could leave. She left her estate there. And then I found there were 3 books actually, that were out of print. One was called Edith Head's Hollywood by a woman named Patty Calistro, out of print. I thought, I dialed 411. Remember what that was? 411 information, because I knew where she lived, and I found a phone number, called her, and said, my name is Susan Clausen. I run an intimate theater in Tucson, Arizona. I'm interested in doing a theatrical. Is this the Patty Calistro who wrote Edith Head's Hollywood? And you heard the reticence in her voice, and she went, yeah. And I said, well, I would love to come over. She lived in California, in the LA area. I said, may I fly over and may we talk about it? I did. Early morning, flew over. We were like two magnets. She had 13 hours of taped interviews.
Wow.
With what we call Edithisms, because Edith had a tendency to see the world through her blue tinted glasses and take credit for some things that maybe she didn't do or she felt she was entitled to take credit for. And we decided we would go forward with this piece. And this was 2001. And I would fly to LA early in the morning. I wish there was Pan Am then, but there wasn't. Flew over to the Academy's library, which is the Margaret Herrick, and research and take the last flight back to Tucson. And it was microfiche time. These articles with microfiche, and you could check, it's a great library. You can check out anything. If you're interested in Alfred Hitchcock, anyone can go in, check out files of their service, and now everything is digitized too. So we researched 6 months before I ever put word to paper, and then did a reading, and it was right around 9/11. It was in the end of that September. Did a reading of the piece, and we felt we had something there, that the story was so interesting. And this was before Edna Mode, before any of the pop culture things that came out.
I was just going to say that, like, the timing was perfect because I think The Incredibles came out in 2004. And Edna Mode, which was based on Edith Head, was introduced to a whole new generation of moviegoers.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it great for kids to, they relate to it. So we premiered in February of 2002, and a miracle happened. The New York Times covered it in Tucson, Arizona. Now that's a miracle. Miracle. And Patty said, don't get your hopes up. She worked for the LA Times. She said, fortunately, the gentleman liked it. And then the photo desk called, said, do you have high-res photos? We did. She said, Patty still said, don't get your hopes up. And then the week after, it was like starting at 3 a.m. in Tucson, I started getting the calls from my East Coast friends going, how the heck did you ever get in, big picture in the New York Times? And then I got a call from the Chicago Historical Society and Costume Guild, and they said, oh, we'd love to bring you in. Do you tour? Now, the first set was a very built-in set. It took place at Universal Studios, and it wasn't really a touring set. But as a good actor, when somebody says, do you tour? What do you say?
Absolutely. Sure.
Absolutely, we tour. I talked to my tech director, Jim, and we said, okay. So we did. And that was really the birth of a conversation with Edith Head, because we realized we could tell the story anywhere and place it anywhere, because in Chicago, the wisdom of the city fathers and mothers, the train would stop from Hollywood to New York. It would stop, and they would grab people off, and they go to the Ambassador, to booth 1. And there was a man there who had been the society band leader, and he actually did fashion shows with Edith, which was something, a staple of what she did in the later years. She would go in, they have recreations of dresses, they would do music from the films, have society people dress. So we now, wherever we tour, anywhere in the world where we have toured, and I usually can find a connection, regardless of how obscure it is. So that was kind of the birth of a conversation with Edith Head, and people say, oh, don't you get tired? It's not really a one-person show, because the audience is able to ask time-appropriate questions, nothing after 1981 when she passed, but the pictures surround, And it's the memories people have that they bring to it. Or if you've never even knew who Edith is or was, you can get a sense of the piece. And, truly, because when you see a Grace Kelly, you see Elizabeth Taylor. This happened in our first international was in the Republic of Georgia.
Oh, interesting.
In Tbilisi.
It
was an international theater festival. And they said, do you want to do it, with subtitles? And I said, no, I'll do it in English because most Georgians do speak English. It's like a language. But they'll watch me and not look above me to read, and they'll get the gist of it. And they did. They absolutely did. And they knew who Edith Head was. So it's been exciting that way. And it's a privilege. And I don't know that I'll ever tire of it because every show is different.
And you have been a staple at the last few fundraising galas for the Pan Am Museum. And you're just a hoot. I love you because what I also like about your work is you are introducing Edith Head in the history that she made as the most famous costume designer in Hollywood history. You're opening up this world to people that may not have appreciated it. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's very exciting that way, not only in what she did in film, but just what she did as a woman in a boys' club. Starting in 1923, women just got the vote very recently, and it was definitely a boys' club in every single way. And she played the game better than anyone. She did the research. She knew how to work with directors. She knew how to work with actors. She was very discreet, which was really important to her. And for instance, when we were in London, we had some young East Indian, wonderful young people, and they were just terrific. Notes in our guest book said, "Thank you. Edith Head showed me that I can have the courage to pursue what I want to do, which is be a writer." So she became not only a role model for young designers, but just a role model and for history. There was a young girl when we did an exhibit in Lancaster with Randall Thropp, who's the archivist at Paramount, at Lancaster, Ohio. And we got a note that this young girl was coming up from West Virginia who did a 4-H project on Edith Head. So she came up. She was so detailed in the project. She had had the whole history on a trifold. And I, as Edith, was with her when she did a presentation.
Oh, that's so great.
Isn't it? Yeah. Fast forward, it's Halloween. I get a picture from her, and she's dressed not as Edith Head, but as Susan Clausen as Edith Head. And then she just graduated from high school. So I sent her for graduation a little Edith Head pin, and on her, gown or the banner or whatever they wear, next to her achievements was the little dress form that I had sent her. So it's so touching. You never know, really, in theater, and probably all of our professions, I think, when there's a passion that's behind it, how it's going to affect the one person, not even the masses, but one person, when it affects their life and you're open to receiving that, it makes all the difference in the world.
And I mean, Edith Head, I love Alfred Hitchcock movies. And I could just see Edith Head just walking into Hitch's office and, no, we're doing it this way because of this. And Hitchcock just okay, whatever you want. I mean, she did Rear Window, The Trouble with Harry, To Catch a Thief, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Vertigo, The Birds, Notorious, Marnie. I mean, I could go on. And she did Sunset Boulevard, which is also one of my favorites, Roman Holiday. I mean, you name it in Hollywood history, Edith Head was probably involved with it.
Right, 1,131 films, but who's counting, right? But and 8 Academy Awards, 35 nominations. For the first 21 years of the Academy Awards, there was no category for costume design. So only imagine how many. And it's a record that'll go unbroken because there are no studio designers anymore. In the day, every studio had their own designer. So like when Edith did All About Eve, she was borrowed from Paramount to do the clothes for Bette Davis only in that film. So that Academy Award is shared with Charles Lemaire, who dressed everybody else, and Edith, who dressed Bette Davis. And some actors just put in their contracts that they wanted Edith. She was great friends with Barbara Stanwyck. And Hitch, interestingly, when after Grace left her Hollywood career for Jewel Crown in Monaco.
Who wouldn't do that, you know?
Oh, I don't. Then Hitch was looking for the next Hitchcock blonde. They were already great friends. Hitch and Alma, his wife, and Edith and her husband, Bill. So when Hitch saw Tippy, and it was in a commercial on the NBC, I think it was the Today Show, he brought Edith in to see it, brought Tippy out to Hollywood, and Edith was the third person after Alma to meet. It was a 3-day screen test. They brought Martin Balsam in to do the screen test, full costuming. Tippy and Edith remained very good friends. So first time, and we had played London and Edinburgh and Tbilisi, and before we ever went into LA, because I wanted to make sure we had the right venue, it was her backyard, and that we had the support of the Costume Designers Guild. So the first one was at the El Portal in North Hollywood in, I think it was 2011. And we got notice that Tippy was coming. And she wanted to present Edith with a couple of reproductions of sketches.
Were you nervous?
I wasn't really, because I do so much research that I know I'm honoring Edith's memory. In no way would I do anything that was really out of character for her. And Tippy was great. She was there in the front row. And then and when she came up, her eyes sort of glazed over, and she was back with Edith, her good friend. And it was so, touching and wonderful. And she gave 2 reproductions of personal wardrobe, because there were no stylists then. If a star was going out, they would go to the studio designer and be dressed. And these were personal wardrobe when they were doing appearances for the Byrds. The whole Byrds budget was $5,000.
Wow.
These dresses, $25,000, the difference. So I had those reproductions, and Tippy was fabulous. And then we did a cruise with a Crystal Cruise back in the day with Tippy. It was a film and theater cruise. And anytime we brought Tippy to Tucson to do a screening of the Byrds and come see the show. And anytime she just relates, even though she knows me, she wants to see Edith. And that is what we found. Why I stay as Edith. Why does it work so great at the Pan Am Gala? You never see Susan. You always see Edith, because people want to share. They want to share a memory. They want to share a film palace that they went to, or a date, or where they grew up. And that's what, I find that with all the flight attendants. I find that with any of the Pan Am crew, they're sharing. They'll go up to me and they'll go, Miss Head, your uniform was our favorite, and the same with the stars. They just love it. And people, but one other interesting was this man, and Stuart can gather, questions. And he came back, he said, your lawyer is there, because I was half in Edith and half out. And I said, my lawyer? He said, no, Edith's lawyer. And in my research, I had known Edith gave all of her Academy Award tickets to her attorney because she was up in the booth commentating. And I knew where he was sitting because Stuart pointed at, told me where. I went over and, I think his name was David, I don't know. But I said, it's so good to see you. And yes, you'll get your tickets again for the Academy Awards this year. And his eyes went, big as saucers. Afterwards, when I'm doing the photos and staying as Edith, Stuart said that what he said to Stuart was everyone should have a chance to spend an afternoon with somebody they loved. And to me, isn't that the greatest compliment, that he could go back and relive those moments? And that's why it's such an awesome responsibility and an incredible privilege to help keep her legacy alive.
And let's pivot to Pan Am for a moment. So 1974, 1975, Pan Am calls up Edith Head and says, we would like for you to design a new uniform for us. That must have been a huge coup for Pan Am when she said yes.
Absolutely. It was in the time that couture designers were designing then. Valentino was at TWA, they were there. But Edith had done Coast Guard also, uniforms. So absolutely. And interesting how my involvement, which was what you had asked, was that Philip Keane, who was doing the closer, I think he was purser for Pan Am.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he and his costume designer were huge Edith Head fans. They came to North Hollywood to see the show. We became fast friends in addition. I went to the closer set as me, not as Edith. And Greg adored and has a great sense of style. And the first that we did a benefit for Pan Am on the back lot of Raleigh Studios. And that was the beginning of that connection. There was Philip, who's divine in every single way. So when Edith got the call, it's interesting because, as she said, in Hollywood, I designed for one star. When I designed for Pan Am, I'm designing for 4,000 stars. And she brought a unique sense of style. She did a handbook called Welcome to Our World of Fashion, Pan Am. So, and she wrote a note, if I may read it.
Oh, can you read it as Edith Head?
Absolutely, I can, Tom. A message from Edith Head. Welcome to Pan American World of Fashion. I have spent the better part of my life designing costumes for movie stars, but I don't remember ever having a design, one costume for 4,000 stars. This was my assignment for Pan American, one of the most challenging of my career. Even before I sat down, I talked to all of you. I got ideas of what you wanted. I interviewed and realized that what we needed to do was create something that had a professional look, a uniform with fashion, and that the world would endure forever. My answer was to create for all seasons, which was unusual then. So she, and it goes on to talk about, she created a wool coat, which was standard issue. The really innovative things that she created, first time that women wore trousers. That was the first. She created fabrics that would work for the international travel that they did. So lightweight for the tropics, short sleeve blouse for Hawaii. She had a trench coat for the drizzly weather of London. Things that were comfortable but were stylish. And she asked the people wearing them, she gave pointers on how these very stylish scarves could be tied. But in this handbook, she said, but experiment to see what would work for you. And the other really innovative was the floating belt, which was amazing. And she said, and she had one of the hats designed. She said, you can wear it down, you can turn it up. She gave pointers on all that. In this handbook also, pointers, she gives what the fabric is so that you can take care of it, because you have to, the minute you step out, you are representing Pan Am. And it has to look good. And only Edith, this was something that she really believed in, is that the tricks she knew in Hollywood could absolutely influence people all around the world. She shared them. She not only did this for Pan Am, but she made patterns that for Vogue, so that women everywhere, and men too, could follow that. So that was interesting. The travel tote was there. She gave the jumper so that things were functional, that they could actually be able to do their job in a comfortable way and be stylish, down to the type of shoe and pump that would be worn. So that's really, really exciting. Also, she gave pointers on the total image, because as she says, there are three magicians in Hollywood: hair, costume, and makeup. So she has about hair. Your hair should be clean, shiny, and healthy. Ensure that the style is simple, attractive, feminine, and practical. If it is the shoulder length, and I know a lot of the flight attendants have mentioned that. And she talks about your hair is your crowning glory. Then about cosmetics: for glowing good looks, wear tasteful makeup, compatible with skin coloring and hair. For your hands are important because they are in absolutely the view of the passengers. That's what they see. So always keep them clean and well manicured. And then posture makes me sit up more straight now. Posture: stand up straight, legs, wear sheer hosiery or pantyhose in a color close to your natural skin color. And last but not least, get lots of rest and exercise. Eat a balanced diet, watch those snacks between meals, and guard your health, which I think was good advice for the weigh-ins, right? So it's
very, very comprehensive for a costume designer.
Oh, it's so comprehensive. I'm sure she worked with, as she said, she interviewed flight attendants. I'm just looking, because it's a six-page pamphlet. And again, on the care of that, talking about the fabrics that were used, like for the raincoat, 65% polyester, 35% cotton, professionally clean only. Then the blouse is hand wash. You could hand wash the blouses. That would be, practical. The apron, 100% polyester, so you could hand launder that. Sweaters, 100% texturized nylon, machine wash. So some practicality there, but that's really important. We all have had disasters in cleaning things or washing things. So it's really a comprehensive and wonderful. And interestingly, even before my initial contact with Philip, I was aware of Pan Am because people would tell me, because I would have flight attendants just come to the show and they would talk to me after and say, we were up at the house on Coldwater Canyon, and Edith was so open to embracing us and wanting to know how we felt about it. And that was her philosophy also in costume designing. She knew her costumes would look only as good as the actors felt in them. So she was really, as she said, she was a better diplomat than a designer. She knew she had to involve, people in this.
Fascinating. We're going to listen to a quick clip. It's about 3.5 minutes long. It's from 1959, Charles Collingwood, had a program called Person to Person. Let's hear Edith Head talk about her profession and then get your reaction.
And then, sometimes, Charles, we have to tell a story. Now, for instance, let me show you an example. In the picture, it's called But Not For Me, there are two women. Now, Clark Gable can't decide which one to marry. He can't decide whether to marry young, ingenue Carol Baker or whether to marry glamorous Lily Palmer. So I have to help him to decide by the way I dress the girls. Then another chance of actually showing character through clothes is a picture like this. It's a picture called Career. Now, here's the same problem. Here's Carolyn Jones, who's a working woman. She's a career girl, and she's glad of it. Here's Shirley MacLaine, whose only career is in being a woman. Now, the point is, which girl gets the man?
Edith, I think you stacked the cards there with those clothes. I suppose men present an entirely different set of problems, don't they, for a fashion designer?
So much easier, Charles, I can't begin to tell you. You see, I think that most women basically distrust other women, and I being a woman designer, they distrust me. For example, if I were to say to Cary Grant, please wear a gray sweater, he'd wear it without any possible controversy. But if I were to say to his leading lady, would you mind wearing a pink sweater with Mr. Grant's gray one? She'd say, well, why don't I wear a blue sweater? That's the problem.
How can a woman, what do you regard as the sort of basic rule for a well-dressed woman?
You mean women who are not necessarily motion picture stars?
Yes, any woman.
The millions of women I do work with do have problems, and they question me, and that's why the book The Dress Doctor was written. It was to help the millions of women who are not in pictures and who do need professional help. Did you know that a lot of women have figure problems?
Well, I've noticed that, yes.
Well, anyway, there are four major ones. A woman can be too fat and too thin or too short or too tall. And what I have done to educate what I call the clothes clinic, you see what that is? That's what you call a living pattern. And I can take a short, dumpy woman, put the wide belt on and say, my dear, you couldn't look worse. You should not wear a wide striped belt. Then suppose I get a woman who has hips, and that happens to women. I say, wear fullness, disguise your hips. We have a rule in the studio. If it isn't pretty, don't show it.
That's a rule I agree with.
Mm-hmm.
How can a woman in general be sure whether or not a particular dress is the right dress for her, Edith?
You mean how she can analyze herself?
Well, I suppose it comes to that.
But did you know that most women can analyze other people? In other words, a woman can say to her next-door neighbor, you look terrible, your skirt's too short. But very few women can actually be honest with themselves. So this is what you do. You see what this is? That is a paper bag. You buy a paper bag, you open it. You cut two holes in it, like that, see? You put the paper bag over your head. Now you're no longer talking to yourself. You're talking to some woman whom you do not know very well, and you can be quite cruel.
Well, you look different.
No, but you see, the thing is, I've become objective. I'm not myself. And I can look in the mirror and say, Edith, your hips are too big. Your skirt is too short. Your shoulders are too narrow. In other words, this may sound silly to you, but it actually truly works. If you can take people and try to get them to look at themselves objectively, then there will be fewer badly dressed women.
Incidentally, I might mention here that I like that dress or suit, I guess it is, that you're wearing tonight.
It's called a dinner suit, and it's white cashmere, and I hope it makes me look very tall, very thin.
Well, it makes you look very pretty, I can say that.
It's wonderful.
Susan, what do you think?
Oh, it's perfect advice. When that clip, and I've seen the visual clip, and they were up at Edith's house, really. A person to person would go do famous celebrities, and they would actually film at the house. And so when we were researching, the Academy put together a reel. I'm watching it when the brown bag moment came out. And here she is in her round glasses. She pulls out a brown bag. It's cut with two perfectly round circles. I do it in the show. You can't write it. It's transcribed from that moment. She always considered herself to be the dress doctor. That's why, as I said, she did these patterns for Vogue. When she was on Art Linkletter on House Party, which was in the 50s. It was a radio show first, then went on TV, and Art Linkletter was the host. He had guest experts come on. So Edith came on as a Hollywood costume designer, telling people what was wrong with how they dressed or how they accessorized. As she says, she was doing makeovers before they ever coined the term. So, and, and she would tell it like it was, and then I always say in the show too, that Geritol or the other sponsors would request that she be nicer to the ladies. As she says, I tried, but sometimes I just had to be blunt, So you'll see she was so astute and so ahead of her times. And what she said in the beginning of that clip, certainly the job of a costume designer is to further the narrative of the film. And she would do that. She adored Grace Kelly. Grace Kelly was the ultimate Hitchcock blonde. She felt Grace could wear anything. She was a model. When Grace did The Country Girl in 1954, one of her greatest challenge was to make Grace Kelly look plain. But that's what furthered the narrative of the film. And Grace won the Academy Award that year. Edith designed her red carpet dress for the opening or the Academy Awards. That dress at that time was the highest priced dress made. It is always. Now we're going back 54. How many years? 70 years ago? 70? Yeah. God, is it? Yes. My God. That dress, when they, around Academy Award time, they always put the top 10 dresses of all time. That dress for Grace Kelly is always on the top 10 list. And it was the cover of Life magazine. Life never did fashion on the cover until Grace in that dress.
Interesting. And, the profession of costume designer is, if it's done really, really well, you won't notice it. Kind of like music in movies. I think music and costumes are kind of an unsung hero, and they make or break a movie. For instance, Jaws without John Williams would probably be pretty boring, or Star Wars without John Williams.
Or Vertigo.
Yeah, without Bernard Herrmann. But I can't even imagine Tippi Hedren being in The Birds without that green suit, or, Gloria Swanson in all of her gowns in Sunset Boulevard. That's all Edith Head.
And you want to know something? In Sunset Boulevard, the film was up for 11 Academy Awards. Edith wasn't even nominated. Can you imagine? And I've got great backstory. When they were in Billy Wilder's office, he wanted Gloria Swanson or Norma Desmond to convey a feeling of the past, but he didn't want to recreate it. He didn't want anything ridiculous. So what Edith did was just add a touch of the bizarre to each of the costumes. And it worked brilliantly in there. And as she says, with each director, you develop a certain language.
Mm-hmm.
And with Hitch, she didn't even need words. He was so detailed on what he wanted. And it was up to Edith to interpret that. For Grace Kelly, it was, I want her to look like a piece of Dresden china in Rear Window.
Oh, yeah, that scene where the big reveal, Jimmy Stewart is opening his eyes and there's Grace Kelly coming into focus in that beautiful dress. Like, oh my gosh, such an iconic piece of Hollywood.
And you know what Hitch did? He slowed the camera down. When she came in, you immediately knew she was a fashion maven, really, and that he with his leg in the cast, and she came in and she flips on this light and she flips on that light. The camera was just slowed down a wee bit. So when she came in for that kiss, it's one of the most iconic kisses, I think, in cinematic history there. But it's definitely a gorgeous fashion statement. And I thought it was interesting what you said about costumes. And they should. Some like Hitch and William Wyler, very authentic. Cecil B. DeMille never did an authentic picture in his entire life. Brr,
Yeah, everything's
more
over the
is
top.
more. Everything's over the top. And Edith, it was beyond Edith, but she did what he asked and created it to the best, but she always went to bat for her actors. And she, as I said earlier, she was very discreet. That's why there are no kiss and tell books about Edith. Lucille Ball says, Edith knew all of our secrets, but she never told.
Interesting. Let's get back to Pan Am calling Edith Head and asking, hey, can you design some uniforms for us? She just got off her Academy Award winning nomination for The Sting in 1973 movie. And now this iconic airline is calling. What do you think was going through Edith Head's mind, and how did the industry take it?
I think what was going through her mind is she also in 67 left Paramount because her contract was not renewed. Big corporations came in. And Edith understood branding before anyone had a name for it. With The Sting, that was the last Academy Award that she received. And it was interesting because it was the first time in the history of the Academy Awards that there was no female star, which usually there is to dress. But as she alluded to in the clip also, she would prefer to work with men. And just imagine, as she says, dressing or undressing the two most handsome men in the world, Paul Newman and Robert Redford. So when the call came, it was really when flight attendants and cabin personnel it was being designed by other airlines. Pan Am was her airline of choice because she traveled so much internationally. Domestically, she couldn't, but internationally, she would always fly Pan Am. And it was the cachet of designing for Pan Am. She was thrilled. And the studio, by that time, because of her friendship with Alfred Hitchcock and with Lew Wasserman, who was the head of Universal, when it was not renewed at Paramount, she went over to Universal. There were less films being made. She had to do more things out of the studio. She went out to do her fashion shows. So when this came, the studios loved it because, again, it was Edith Head from Universal Studios designing Pan Am uniforms. It was an exciting time for her. And I think she loved the research. I think she loved meeting everyone and being able to create for their comfort level, for their style. But can you imagine? I mean, look at the body types. Every type of person worked at Pan Am, just like they did in Hollywood. In Hollywood, there were dress forms. You can see each star had their own dress form.
Mm-hmm.
So they could do the bulk of the work on that. But she would suggest that things be fitted, and they would do fittings. There's one little article here where when they go for uniform fitting, I joined Pan Am, and it was like the uniform fitting had been a wedding dress fitting, the way the seamstress made a fuss. And she was given her very own sky blue Edith Head design uniform. It was a dream come true for people who had that. And you see the label in the uniform. It's her signature, the same label that would be in a Hollywood costume. And, she designed Boeing. Do you know that film?
Yeah.
They have that. Yeah, she designed the uniforms for that. She designed Airport,
yeah, Academy Award winning movie. Yeah, that's right. And I think she did all of the Airport movies.
Yeah.
I mean, the first two were okay. I mean, the first one was good, but then it got a little crazy. 75 was the second one, and I think 77 and 79. And to our listeners, the only reason why I remember it is because it was called Airport 77 and Airport 79.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Some of the, Gloria Swanson.
Oh yeah, and Jimmy Stewart too, like Christopher Lee, all of these really, really blockbuster stars starred in all of those airport disaster films. And because of that, we have the comedic masterpiece Airplane coming out,
Exactly.
making fun of all of those airport movies. So it was great that it's great that we're talking about it because I completely forgot about it. But Edith Head also was very well known to the public, and she had this incredible sense of humor. I'm going to play another clip. One of the other franchises that I love is Columbo with Peter Falk. And Peter Falk actually gave Edith Head her Oscar in '73 for The Sting.
It's Twiggy.
Yeah. And Edith Head, I think, had like, a couple, not even a minute of her acceptance speech, and then she left.
Basically, she said, thank you.
Yeah, she said, thank you. It was great, dressing these two handsome guys, see you later. But so Edith Head played herself in an episode of Columbo, and I'm going to play a clip. Anne Baxter played the murderer, who was also an actress. And this was from a 1973 episode of Columbo. Let's take a listen.
Look, a little overdressed for this time of the day, huh? What do you think? You couldn't care less. Edith is designing a whole new wardrobe for me. Oh, Edith? This is Lieutenant Columbo.
How do you do?
Edith Head. How do you do?
Which of these do you think would be better for the new scene? This one or this one?
Yeah, no, I like this one. I'm wedded to it, but I don't like the red. I think this would be a lot better.
In other words, use this fabric.
I think it'll work just as well. Are you still wearing that tie? Do you know ever since I met you, you've been wearing this stupid thing? Edith, haven't you got a decent tie around here?
Of course I have.
Come on, let's get this off. All right.
She the one I see on the Academy Awards?
Huh? Yeah,
What's her name?
Edith Head.
Edith Head. Those are her Oscars?
Yeah, aren't they fantastic?
She won these?
Yeah. Lieutenant, I've been lying to you.
About what?
About Jerry Parks and me. Remember when you found us together yesterday and I said we were just talking about Jean?
Yes?
Well, Jerry Parks has some awful stuff on me. He has research records in his files. And I didn't want him to tell you.
How would this one do?
Hi. Oh, that's perfect. Oh, yeah, too much. Yeah. Oh, Edie?
Thank you.
Would you bring in that ombre chiffon? I'd love
The
to
one
look
from
at
the
it.
dress?
Yeah. Thank you, darling.
So, Susan, what can you tell us about Edith Head and her cameos?
Well, there's a lot because in this one, in the whole segment, it visually is great because she often would display her Oscars. She said there's nothing like a row of Oscars for putting the fear of God into a young actress who thinks she knows everything about dress designing. And
she would also, they would make appearances in interviews too, right? She would
absolutely
just bring them wherever.
Absolutely. She loved that when they asked, who were the most important men in her life. And I don't know that she ever said this, but kind of maybe. When I ask that question, I always say, all of them are named Oscar, So this was great because Anne Baxter was a great friend of Edith's. And in fact, Anne Baxter's daughter is Edith's goddaughter.
Interesting.
So
I didn't know that.
Melissa contacted me through her publicist years ago. And she said, I'm Melissa Galt, and Aunt Edie was my godmother. Well, I have a copy of Edith Head's will, and Edith collected Southwest jewelry and all. And Melissa, she gifted me with this beautiful necklace that's always on the set. When your listeners see the show, it's amber and a silver patina kind of, it's just wonderful. And so that's great. Now there's other cameos that Edith did in Lucy Gallant. She played herself. It takes place in West Texas, and Jane Wyman was in it, and there was a fashion show. And there are different theories where the director encouraged Edith to take her glasses off. One, maybe they were reflective, but two, for the beauty of it. Well, she couldn't read a damn thing, because she never glasses.
And her glasses were her signature.
Look,
as we know with Edna Mode,
the
her glasses were her signature.
The bangs, and she had a chignon that she said she used for pencils. And then there was the Oscar. There was a film called The Oscar, and Edith played herself in it. So, and when with the acceptance speech, which is so funny, one of the first with Bob Hope was, and he was the ultimate host of the Academy Awards, right? So Edith's name is called, she comes up, she takes the award, she poses, she smiles, and she leaves. And Bob says, Edith says, thank you. She never said anything. She was basically shy. And in fact, she credits Art Linkletter for bringing her out. And I interviewed Art Linkletter. He was still with us. His office was on Wilshire, and he actually recorded some that I've used in some shows. But he, next to you, was perhaps the most wonderful interview and bringing up questions. But he really did. He taught her how to be able to do that. And then she was on radio, she was on TV. She was the face of what a costume designer did, and she embraced it. She was syndicated in 36 magazines. That's unheard of. She knew that everybody was just waiting to take over. And in Hollywood, whether legacy is respected, it has to be really finessed. And she knew she was only as good as the next project. So she never turned down a film. In the day, she would work 30 or 40 films, if you can imagine.
Wow. That's crazy.
Definitely a woman ahead of her times.
So you have brought Edith Head alive, and you're introducing her to a whole new generation. How does that make you feel, that you're taking this wonderful lady and her wonderful accomplishments, and you're able to bring it to life for other people to learn about and appreciate her work?
It's absolutely touches my heart and soul in every single way. And I stay in touch with people who have seen the show, and they'll come back, with notes or what it meant to them to be able to do it. And with Edna Mode now, she opened up the generation for kids. And I love, if I'm in a sit-down run longer than 1 or 2 performances, I love doing the show for young people. I do a teaching guide. I put it in their vernacular. Before there was Project Runway, there was Edith Head. And I do lists of how they can find it. They totally relate to Edith in every way, because her message is really clear. Style comes from the inside out. Don't follow fads. Find a look that's attractive to you. And, you can have anything you want in life as long as you dress for it. These are messages that kids, and because she does have a dry but wicked sense of humor, as you pointed out, it comes out in the show. And I had to learn to be less animated than who I am, who Suze is. I work with, certainly a voice and movement as we crafted the show. She was a teacher, so she really talked in a clipped kind of way. But it's so meaningful that all ages are relating. And I know you love Alfred Hitchcock, so do I. And it's great when films, back in the day when I first started and there were video stores, remember that?
Yes, I do. Blockbuster Video. And
exactly. I would always, when I was in a town, people would say when they would go that the films were checked out because you wanted to see them.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
When we were in LA, there was like the Art Institute, which was a design thing. And it was right across from the theater. So I went over and said, I'd love to, talk and bring the students over. 95.8% had never heard of Edith Head. Now, these were design kids, graphic designers. So they put a reel together of some of the great cinematic moments. And I was there as me, and we talked about those. And then 80 students came over. They fell in love. And they're watching classic films now and understanding that and going, backstory with Alfred Hitchcock, all of those things which really matter because there's so many life lessons that have nothing necessarily to do with Hollywood, but have everything to do with what film represented to people in other countries. It was the way that they learned English. They understood values of America. It represented a world that they only knew through the cinema. And to me, to keep that alive, to keep alive a woman who really followed a dream. She was not an artist. She had a master's degree from Stanford in romantic languages, but went after it, stayed with it, reinvented herself, had over a 60-year career, never walked off a set. You realize that she could be a role model for anyone in any career.
And Susan's website is edithhead.biz. And there will be a link in the episode description to link to her website. For our listeners that might not know, The Incredibles, we were talking about the character of Edna Mode, is a 2004 Pixar animated film. And Edna Mode is a character that is a cross between Edith Head, looks like Edith Head, and Q from James Bond. And we are going to do something interesting on the Pan Am podcast. We are going to play a clip of Edna Mode, and then we're going to get Susan's reaction.
You have an appointment?
I'm an old friend. I just wanted
All visitors are required to make
Get back. Go check the electric fence or something. What is it? Who are you? What do you want? Oh my God, you've gotten fat. Come in, come.
Yes, things are going quite well. My God, no complaints. But, it is not the same at all.
Weren't you just in the news? Some show in Prague?
Milan, darling, Milan. Supermodels. Nothing super about them. Spoiled, stupid little stick figures with poofy lips who think only about themselves. I used to design for gods. But perhaps you'll come with a challenge, eh? I was surprised to get your call.
I just need a patch job.
This is Mega Mesh, outmoded but very sturdy, and you've torn right through it. What have you been doing, Robert? Moonlighting hero work?
Must have happened a long time ago.
I see. This is a hobo suit, darling. Now you can't be seen in this. I won't allow it. 15 years ago, maybe, but now...
What do you mean? You designed it.
I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now. You need a new suit. That much is certain.
A new suit? Oh, where the heck am I going to get a new suit?
You can't! It's impossible! I'm far too busy, so ask me now before I again become sane.
Wait, you want to make me a suit?
You push too hard, darling. But I accept. It will be bold, dramatic, heroic.
Yeah, something classic, like Dyna Guy. Oh, he had a great look. Oh, the cape and the boots.
No capes.
Isn't that my decision?
Do you remember Thunderhead? Tall, storm powers. Nice man, good with kids.
Listen.
November 15th of 58. All was well, another day saved, when his cape snagged on a missile pin.
Thunderhead was not the brightest bulb.
Stratogale, April 23rd, 57. Cape caught in a jet turbine.
You can't generalize about this.
Meta-Man, Express Elevator, Diner Guy, snag on takeoff, splashdown, sucked into a vortex. Knock it! No, go on. Your new suit will be finished before your next assignment.
You know I'm retired from hero work.
As am I, Robert. Yet here we are.
I only need a patch job for sentimental reasons.
Fine. I will also fix the hobo suit.
You're the best of the best, E.
Yes, I know, darling. I know.
I'd like to speak to Edna, please.
This is Edna.
E? This is Helen.
Helen who?
Helen Parr? You know, Elastigirl. Yes, it's been a while. Listen, there's only one person Bob would trust to patch a super suit, and that's you, E.
Yes. Marvelous, isn't it? Much better than those horrible pajamas he used to wear. Well, all finished. When are you coming to see?
Look, I'm calling
Don't make me beg, darling. I won't do it, you know.
No, I'm calling about suit, about Bob's suit. I'm calling about Bob's suit.
Come in 1 hour, darling. I insist, okay? Okay, goodbye.
All right, welcome back, Susan. So Edna Mode is voiced by Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles, a Pixar film, 2004. Give us your reaction to that hilarious clip.
I love every second of Edna Mode. Now, Brad, interestingly, they will not say it's an homage to Edith because they never paid for right of likeness, right of publicity.
But obviously it is.
Obviously it is. I mean, I can be walking down the street and people go, Edna, but it's hilarious. She is such a great character and no capes. Constantly, you think of those lines. So when the film came out, Jim, who's my tech director and friend and always is on tour, and Bella and I, we went. And it was like, oh my God. It was just when the doll came out. I'm going, it's Hanukkah, Jim. I want the doll. So of course I got the doll, which, is an interactive and it'll talk to you. Now, the first thing, Edna can say it. No one else could. If somebody came in and they lower the window, my God, you got fat. Could you say that? You can't say those. You cannot say those things, but Edna. So I have such a collection of Edna Mode ornaments and Edna Mode zipper ties and Edna Mode everything, which is terrific. It's just a great film. You think of, when I talk about the face of a designer, animated character, a postal stamp, the post office did a whole series of Hollywood creatives. Well, who's the one for costume design?
Edith Head.
Edith Head. Google Doodle. Not in a landmark year for a birthday or celebration. I get a call from the Motion Picture and Television Fund saying you cannot tell a soul, but on this date, a Google Doodle is going to come out that's a tribute to Edith Head. We want you to come out and spend the day. We want you to do a Google Hangout all day. And then I did the show for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, but I couldn't tell anyone. How hard is that with a Google Doodle coming out? It came out at midnight. My website crashed because there were is it the broadband or whatever? It didn't have enough. So, I had to get my web designer. We increased it immediately, and it was so much fun. And there's a video on the website, I think it's up there, that shows me at the Motion Picture and Television Fund. And Edith, as I said, left her estate there. So there's a plaza in her honor. And I just stayed as Edith. So many people had worked with Edith. And again, it's that sharing. Because I do so much research, I feel comfortable talking in her voice as far as the way she would think about things. So that was great. But Edna, There's no one like our Edna Mode for sure.
How long does it take to get into costume and get into character?
It because I've done probably 1,200 performances over the years. I do the same prep. I go through the script twice a day on performance days. I change at least 2 weeks before I'm going out because Edith never wore, when she was working, color on her nails. And I always wear red, Suze does. I change and go to what I have my Edith nails to get used to my hands. And then the wig was created. Bob Mackey was a sketch artist for Edith. So he was part of our interviewing. And he said, well, you can do your own hair. And I said, well, yeah, I'd rather go for a total transformation. So we went to Bob Mackey's Renata of Burbank, his wig designer. And my head was measured in every single way. It's a handmade wig, hand-tied every human hair. And because we do such close-up work, it's really important because I'm so close to people that it looks real and natural and part of it. So I always put that on, and first I eat the same thing before, ritualistic, before a performance. And
what is that?
Well, usually if I have the thing, it's a little bit, it's rice, a little fish, a little string beans, and try to eat it early enough that everything settles that way. Rarely do I even have a glass of wine leading up to this in the weeks before, because I just want to make sure there's clarity. Because as I said, it's an enormous responsibility in doing this kind of production and being somebody else in such a manner that people believe it. And then I get to the theater really early. I love being in a theater early and alone. I go through it all. I always do full rehearsals before actually opening to the audience. So that's in my tech writer that we have that ability to be able to do it. I listen to some audio that I have, some of those radio clips, just to get the voice going again in my head. And then I wait for the questions to come back, which are different. As I said, they have to be time appropriate. Once in Phoenix, this was the question that came back was, I was a tram driver at Universal Studios in 1973. Do you remember me? And I had him stand up, and it was a theater in Phoenix that had the kind of a dress circle. He stood up, and I said, oh, and I knew his name, Buzz, or I said, now, Buzz, you were the one who had that distinctive toot, 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 toot when the tram came by. And he goes, that's right, Miss Head. Whether it did or not, he transformed it to that. And they would say at Universal Studios tour, Edith Head was the biggest star they would ever see on the tour because she played it right. She'd hear the toot toot, she'd grab an Oscar, she'd step out, she'd wave, or she'd grab a sketch pad and draw, because again, it was her fan base that kept her going.
Mm-hmm.
And she had those fans throughout the country.
Anything you'd like to share with our listeners as we near the end of this interview?
This has been so much fun. You are such a smart interviewer, and I love that you love Alfred Hitchcock because she did so much. She designed for all of the Hitchcock blondes. So it's, as I have said, it is such a privilege. It is such an honor to help keep her legacy, to perform and to be a part of each aspect of her life, and Pan Am being one of the most important.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for your time, Susan. Again, Susan's website is edithhead.biz, and there is a link in the episode description to visit her website, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's always a privilege to be with you. Such a handsome fellow.
And I'm Edith Head approved. My tuxedo
Yes, you
at least
are.
was.
Yes.
At the gala last year.
After she fixed your tie.
Yes, it was a little crooked, but
just askew a bit.
All right, Susan. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for coming on the program. Pan Am was a pioneer in air travel and still stands as one of the most iconic and innovative airlines in aviation history. That legacy lives on at the Pan Am Museum in Garden City, New York, where you can explore the rich history of the aircrafts and individuals at the heart of the company known as the world's most experienced airline. For more information about the Pan Am Museum, check out our website at www.thepanammuseum.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. As was once a tagline in one of our commercials, we would greatly appreciate your support to help the Pan Am Museum continue making the going great. You can also support the museum by shopping on our online store for all things Pan Am, accessories, apparel, jewelry, books, models, and posters. We want to hear from you. If you have a question for us or want to share your story, our email address is podcast@thepanammuseum.org. As flight crews once said to passengers departing for their destinations around the world, thank you for flying, Pan Am.